أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرض أرواحنا له الفداء وعجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. For today's discussion, we are discussing Abwab al-Iman. So what we are saying here is Assalamu alaikum ya Abwab al-Iman. So I'm going to give a very quick introduction of this, and then we'll do the rest, inshallah, next week. Abwab is the plural of Bab. Bab means door or gateway. And Iman, of course, is faith. So I'll discuss faith in more depth in a moment. So here what we are saying in the Ziyarat is Assalamu alaikum ya Abwab al-Iman. Peace be upon you, O the doorways or gateways to faith. In other words, if you want to enter faith, it is the door of the Imams through which you must pass if you want to reach Iman and faith. Now, Iman is a very interesting term. It comes from Amn. Amn means safety, because someone who believes in the Islamic beliefs and acts in a righteous manner is absolutely for sure safe from the punishments and pains of this world and the next. Qur'an says in 682, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَلَمْ يَلْبِسُوا إِيمَانَهُمْ بِالظُّلْمٍ أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمُ الْأَمْنُ. Those who have faith and do not taint their faith with wrongdoing and sins, for such there shall be safety. So a mu'min is never worried about what may happen externally, what tomorrow may bring, what next week might happen. He doesn't have these worries. He relies on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has got such a level of faith that he's accepted Allah as his Lord. He accepts Allah as the all-wise, the all-powerful, the all-knowing, his protector, his sustainer. And therefore he relies on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he's completely relaxed. He submits to Allah's will and therefore he doesn't have stress. So all of these are instances of safety. He doesn't cross the boundaries of Shariat and hence he doesn't commit any kind of sin and therefore he doesn't fear the punishment of Allah. Yes, he will have one worry, and that is his humility. Actually, his worry is, am I doing enough for my Lord? Am I being good enough? Can I do more? Am I using my time properly? And this was in all of the awliya, even the Imams. They expressed their humility in front of Allah by saying, we have not worshipped you properly. We have not given you your due. And no one can give Allah his due. So yes, there is that kind of worry, but that is actually a good worry. That is a good stress. That is a good thing to worry about because it makes you better and better. So what is Iman? Iman, faith, is it just a belief? Is it just something you hold in your heart? Or is it more than this? So here we will refer to the Holy Qur'an. Qur'an says, for example, just saying I believe is not enough. قَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا. The Bedouin Arabs say, we have faith. آمَنَّا. They say, we have Iman. The Holy Prophet is told, قُلْ لَمْ تُؤْمِنُوا. No, say you do not have faith yet. وَلَكِنْ قُولُوا أَسْلَمْنَا. Rather, you should say, we have embraced Islam. فَلَمَّا يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. Because faith has not yet entered your hearts. You are not in the state of Iman. You're not there yet. Yes, you say with your tongues that you believe. Fair enough. You are regarded as Muslims. But your Iman has not yet entered your heart. So just saying it is not enough. What about if you just believe? You don't say it, but you believe in your heart. Is that enough? Again, ulama say no. Because Qur'an in 27:14, it says, وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهَا أَنفُسُهُمْ. They impugned the prophets, though they were convinced in their hearts that the prophets were true, they still denied them. So just believing in your heart is not enough, because many people believed that this message and this prophet is true, but their actions and they did not follow up on that belief, and they actually went against those prophets. So that is also not Iman. Here we have an interesting story from Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl, the most staunch, stubborn, violent, aggressive, rude person in the early days of Islam. When he would see the Holy Prophet, he would abuse him, swear at him, mock him, be violent towards him, plot against him. Everything you can think of. If you were to think of a personification of kufr, that would be Abu Jahl. One day, all of a sudden, when he sees the Holy Prophet, out of the ordinary, he greets the Holy Prophet. Now, this was very surprising because usually he would mock and swear and all of these things. Today, he greets him. Both of the groups, Muslim and Kuffar, they were surprised. Kuffar says, oh my God, what's going on? Has Abu Jahl become a Muslim? Muslims were saying, oh my God, what's going on? This man who always abuses us, today he looks polite towards the Holy Prophet. Someone asked him afterwards. They said, you usually abuse this man. Today you have greeted him. Why? Have you become a Muslim? He says, Inni wallah la'a'lamu annahu lasadiq. No, I have not become a Muslim. But I know he's truthful. I know he's right. I know what he's saying is the truth. So in his heart, he had that understanding that the Prophet was correct and the Prophet was not lying. But why don't I become a Muslim? Mata kunna taba'an li abdi manaf. The thing that is stopping me, the reason why I'm so aggressive towards him, is that since when were we ever going to obey the sons of Abd Manaf? Why should we obey that tribe, that line? No, I'm not ready to do that. So in his heart, he knew the Holy Prophet was right. He knew he was truthful. But because of his stubbornness and his pride, he said, I'm not going to bow down to someone from that tribe. So even someone like Abu Jahl seems to have had some inclination towards belief in Rasulullah, but we cannot call him a mu'min. We cannot say he believed. We cannot say he had Iman. So simple belief in the heart is not enough. Now, what happens if someone believes in the heart and expresses in speech, but does not act on it? Again, is that enough? Qur'an says no. And the best example of this is Shaitan himself. Because he says, and there are so many verses here, Shaitan says, خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ. First of all, you created me from fire. So Shaitan recognizes Allah. So he has belief in God. He recognizes that God created him. So he recognizes the powers of God and the attributes of God. فَبِإِزَّتِكَ. In another place he says, I swear by your might. Oh Allah, I swear by your might. لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. That I will make all of them go astray. Swearing by Allah's might. So he recognized that Allah is a supreme being. Otherwise, you don't swear by his might. So he recognized Allah, that Allah creates, Allah has attributes, Allah has power, that he has might. فَأَنذِرْنِي إِلَىٰ يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. Give me time until the day they are resurrected. So he believed in the day of resurrection. He believed in Qiyamah. إِلَّا إِبَادَكَ مِنْهُمُ الْمُخْلَصِينَ. I won't be able to misguide your special, sincere servants. Who are they? The prophets and the imams. So even he had an understanding that some point in the future, people will be there who are mukhlasin, who are special, who are prophets, imams. So you could say he had a belief in Tawheed, in the qualities of God, in the prophets, in the imams, in the hereafter. He had all of this belief. And he expresses it as per the Qur'an, but because he didn't act upon it, he's not regarded as a mu'min, of course. So, what does all this mean? It means that because Shaitan, the Qur'an says, Abba wastakbar, because he had pride and he denied the order of God, wakana min al-kafirin, he was from the disbelievers. Why? Even though he expresses it with the tongue, even though he believes in his heart, he is still a disbeliever in that sense. Why? Because all of these three things have to come together. Belief in the heart, expression with the tongue, and action upon what you believe in. Hence, we find a brilliant definition which the ulama accept as the proper definition of Iman. Most of the ulama, they accept this as the proper definition of Iman. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen says, al-Iman ma'rifatun bil-qalb. Iman is the belief in the heart, wa iqrarun bil-lisan, and expression with the tongue in your words, wa amalun bil-arkan, and acting upon it with your body and your physical body. So these three things, when they come together, ma'rifatun bil-qalb, iqrarun bil-lisan, wa amalun bil-arkan, belief in the heart, expression with your words, and acting upon it, when these three come together, that is Iman. Ma'sumin alayhimus salam are the gateway to this Iman. I think we will stop there for today, and we will continue this next week. This has quite a lot of depth, this particular phrase and sentence. This has quite a lot of depth, so inshallah we will continue at least for next week, maybe even one more after that, regarding Abwab al-Iman. Let's see if we have any questions. This is from our last session, which was regarding Arkan al-Bilad, where we said the Ma'sumin and the Imams are those people who are the rukn of this earth. The rukn, we said, was like a stabilizing, like a cornerstone, without which the earth would perish, or it would cease to exist, or it would collapse, or it would become unstable. The word of the hadith is, لَوْلَا الْحُجَّةُ لَسَاخَتِ الْأَرْضِ بِأَهْلِهَا. So the question was that if this is the case, then what about before Nabi Adam? Yes, we know that Nabi Adam was the first prophet, and therefore he was the Hujjat of Allah. But what about before Nabi Adam? Who was the Hujjat at that time? So this is a very good question, and it has a number of different ways to respond. However, before I begin responding, I just want to make one thing clear. You see, we have a number of beliefs in Islam, okay? And these beliefs, we should basically accept them. Sometimes we don't know the very fine details about the intricacies of these beliefs, okay? And this is one of them. For example, لَوْلَا الْحُجَّةُ لَسَاخَتِ الْأَرْضِ بِأَهْلِهَا. If it wasn't for Hujjat on the earth, then the earth would collapse or cease to be with all of its people and inhabitants. Now, what are the finer details about this? Sometimes we don't know all of the finer details. However, this thing is so much established in hadith, from the sayings of our imams, from the sayings of our ma'sumin, that we should accept it. And sometimes we have to admit that we don't know all of the very finer points. They have not been mentioned. Either the ma'sumin deemed it unnecessary to mention all the points, or it would have detracted from this belief somehow. So sometimes we are looking at different ways of understanding this. So the idea is that we accept, because it's proven beyond belief, beyond doubt, because it's appearing in hadith so many times. And then the finer points, we have to say, look, Allah knows best. We can only give some ideas and theories from our understanding, from what the Qur'an says, from what the understanding of the ulama is, who are experts in this field, experts in hadith. So this is one general principle. However, we do have some responses, but again, these are all, they're going to be different responses, bearing in mind different things. So the question once again, who was on the earth before Nabi Adam to stabilize it? If we say that Arkan al-Bilad, you, O Imams, you Hujjats of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which includes the prophets as well, they were Hujjat of Allah in their time. Before this all Hujjat happened and Nabi Adam was created, how was the earth stabilized? The answers are as follows. The first possibility is that the earth wasn't as stable as we think. It was going through changes. It was going through different changes. It was first, as we believe, that it was covered entirely in water, and then the continents appeared, and then there were different life forms. It wasn't in a completely stable state at all. But once it became ready, then it was ready to receive the Hujjat of Allah. And once the Hujjat of Allah came upon the earth, then it really stabilized. Okay? So the earth really exists to serve and host the Hujjat of Allah, the Insan Kamil. That's the purpose of the existence of the earth. And if the Insan Kamil is not there, it would cease to exist because it doesn't serve a purpose, and Allah doesn't do anything without a purpose. Allah, being the wise creator He is, He only does things, and He only creates things which have a purpose. He won't create anything just baseless, aimless, without any reason, because that is not what a wise creator would do. So once the earth became ready to receive the Hujjat of Allah, then the Hujjat of Allah is appointed upon the earth. If it wasn't for the Hujjat, then the earth would be pointless itself and it would cease to exist. And hence, it would cease to be. So it was preparing itself in that time for this event of the Insan Kamil, the Hujjat of Allah coming upon it. And then once He occupies it and is on the earth, then it remains in a stable state. So this is one way of looking at it. But along these same lines, what one of the scholars says is that the earth, think of it as a body, and the Hujjat is the Ruh. So without the Ruh, the body becomes lifeless, the body becomes aimless, we bury it in the ground. So in other words, the earth can be there, but it won't function properly. So maybe before Hazrat Adam, the earth as a physical structure was there, but it wasn't functioning properly. It didn't have any life, it didn't have any function, or it wasn't running in the smooth way that we see today. So that's another explanation. Then we have a third explanation. This is from Ayatollah Ray Shahri, who himself, he has a commentary on Ziyarat Jamia Kabira. And he gives two views. He says, look, one way of looking at this, which some people have said, is that the earth is kept intact and stabilized, not from a physical perspective, but from a spiritual perspective. In other words, the earth could be there as a physical structure, but it won't have that same spiritual dimension that it has today, because there is no Insan Kamil upon the earth. However, Agha Ray Shahri, he doesn't agree with this. He said, no, this still doesn't make sense, because all of the apparent readings of the hadith, when we read the hadith regarding this issue, they all seem to suggest a physical stabilization, not a spiritual. So he rejects that. And then he brings the view of Allama Majlisi, who says that it is the physical earth that is intended. Otherwise, if it can be argued that spiritually the Ma'asumeen have an effect upon this earth, from the Nur-e Muhammadi, the first thing that was created was the Nur of our Prophet, and then the Anwar of Ahlul Bayt from that same Nur, and then from that everything else was created. If that was the case, then that Nur-e Muhammadi is there today, and we don't need an Imam today physically present to stabilize the earth. So he rejects that. So going on to his point about the physical, he says, regarding the physical earth stabilizing, he says, number one, we have assumed, so he says we have assumed that the earth was fully formed before Hazrat Adam. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't fully formed. Maybe it was going through those changes and unstable nature, and it wasn't stable. He says that's one possibility. And then when Hazrat Adam came, he stabilized it and he made it stable. Otherwise, before that, maybe it wasn't stable. The second point he says is that we have again assumed that there was a time gap between the earth being created and Hazrat Adam coming onto it. Who says there was a time gap? The Qur'an doesn't go into this detail. The Qur'an, it's not absolutely clear that there was a huge time gap. The Qur'an, as you know, it tells us things very, very short, and it gets to the point very quickly. It doesn't go into many details. So perhaps there was no time gap. Maybe that Hazrat Adam and the stable earth happened at the same time, and Hazrat Adam kept it stable. And the third idea connected to this is that someone may say, but the Quran says that Hazrat Adam came down upon the earth, hubut, upon the earth. So it was there, So why do we say that it could, maybe there's not a time gap? So he answers this very nicely. The ulama say that who's to say that this hubut, coming down upon the earth, is literal? Maybe where Hazrat Adam and Bibi Hawa were, in that so-called heaven or garden, it was definitely not the heaven of the hereafter, because that is only for when you have lived your life and you die and then you get your reward for your good deeds, then you go into that heaven. So it could be a worldly heaven, a worldly paradise. In other words, a place of bliss upon the earth, but a place of bliss where they were protected from the elements and they were protected from other things. And then this coming down upon the earth is metaphorical. It's not physical. It's not like he was high up and then he had to descend in that sense. No, it could be he descended in the metaphorical sense, that he came onto the earth without that bliss and without that garden and without that protection that he previously had. So that means that he was on earth anyway. Therefore, we may have assumed that there was a gap between Hazrat Adam and the earth. Maybe he was on the earth already in that garden of bliss. And then fourthly, which I think it seems the most likely actually from all of the different opinions that I've read, many scholars have said this, that perhaps the instability of the earth relates to the period in which humans were occupying the earth. Because once they occupy the earth, then they start to interact with one another, they have conflicts with one another, they have issues with one another. And these issues and these conflicts and these problems which come about between human beings, that is what could cause the instability of the earth. So perhaps this lasakhat al-ard, the earth will be destroyed, relates to these issues of human beings with one another. And if that's the case, then definitely Hazrat Adam was the first of human beings, and there will always be until the end of the world a hujjat of Allah upon the earth, and it relates to when human beings lived on the earth. So you only need a hujjat, this is the summary, you only need a hujjat when people are around, because hujjat itself, the word hujjat, means an argument and binding proof. So the hujjat and binding proof of Allah is only needed when you have someone to prove something to, i.e. human beings. So we understand it as the time from Hazrat Adam onwards that a hujjat is required. And we have some Quranic verses to support this view. For example, 30:41, in which, if you just give me a second, I will get the verse, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ظَهَرَ الْفَسَادُ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِي النَّاسِ. Corruption has appeared in land and sea because of what people have done, because of what their hands have done. In other words, it is people who spoil the stability of this earth. So then we have no problem at all. We can say, no, when people are around, that's when the hujjat is required. And we also have another verse, 796. وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْقُرَىٰ آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. If the people of the towns had been faithful and God-wary, we would have opened to them blessings from the heaven and the earth. In other words, there is a link between what people do and the blessings available. If they had been more believers and they had been more God-wary, then there's no end of Allah's blessings that can come upon the earth. But وَلَكِنْ كَذَّبُوا, they denied. فَأَخَذْنَاهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. So we seize them because of what they used to do. So this seems like a very solid opinion according to my humble view. So the earth with people cannot continue without hujjat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yet another very, very interesting view of this is that who's to say that this generation of human beings, which started with Nabi Adam, who's to say that these were the first human beings? We have some hadiths which suggest that no, there have been previous Adams and previous nations before yours. And if they had that kind of intellect and free will, then definitely they would have had a hujjat. So maybe one of the previous generations, hujjat stabilized the earth before even Nabi Adam, but that would still have been a hujjat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I think I'll summarize these various opinions to say that probably the strongest one is that once there are people, you need a hujjat. So saying before Nabi Adam what was there and who stabilized it doesn't really make sense, because there was no corruption for the hujjat of Allah to come and stabilize. And you can say there was no binding proof of Allah to be given because there was no one to give it to. Only once human beings appear, then you need a hujjat. So this is the first, seems to be more strong opinion. And the other one is that the whole point of the earth is to guide human beings, the guidance of human beings. And if there is no guide, then that guidance can't be completed and it can't happen. So therefore, the earth serves no purpose, and therefore it would not continue, and the plan of God would not happen, which is impossible. So therefore, there has to be a hujjat. However you look at it, there has to be a hujjat, either for the plan of Allah to continue and the earth to serve a purpose, or to provide guidance to people, you can say, or you can say that the hujjat of Allah is needed because when there are people on the earth, they have to have the binding proof of Allah, and the hujjat of Allah, the insan kamil, whether a prophet or an imam, is that binding proof. So these were the different views and opinions. I hope that's clear. I know we have looked at different things, and I've summarized it extremely short because these sessions are meant to be very, very short and sharp sessions. We don't want to make them too long. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.